The alarm screamed through the ship's bridge, cutting through the silence of deep space. Mireille's eyes snapped open. She had been running on 3 hours of sleep for the past week, but her body moved automatically, trained by 20 years of war and survival. Her hand reached for the comm panel before her mind fully registered what was happening. "Captain, incoming transmission," her second officer called out. It's from New Busan." Mireille's heart stopped for a moment. New Busan. Home. She hadn't been back in 3 years. The screen flickered to life and her brother's face appeared. Taeyang looked terrified, his eyes wide with panic. Behind him she could see smoke and hear screams. "Mireille, they're here. The Valtesh. They came without warning. They're killing everyone who resists." Daehyun tried to talk to them, tried to negotiate, but the transmission cut to static. Mireille stood frozen, staring at the empty screen. Her fingers gripped the edge of the console until her knuckles turned white. The bridge fell silent. Her crew knew better than to speak. They had served under Captain Mireille for years. They had seen her face down enemy warships without blinking. They had watched her walk through fire to complete missions. But they had never seen this look on her face. "Helmsman," she said quietly, her voice colder than the void outside. "Set course for New Busan. Maximum burn." "Captain, we're still 3 days from completing the escort contract. The client will—" "I don't care." Mireille's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. Take a pod. I'll pick you up on the way back." Nobody moved. They had followed her through hell before. They would follow her again. The Iron Phoenix turned away from its escort duty, engines burning hot as it raced toward human space. Mireille stood on the bridge watching the stars blur past. Behind her emotionless face, memories crashed through her mind like waves. Daehyun as a baby, crying in her arms while explosions lit up the sky during the first contact wars. Daehyun as a child, asking why the other species looked at humans with such contempt. Daehyun as a young man, showing her his acceptance letter to the Central Academy, his eyes bright with hope. She had left him to take these contracts, the dangerous ones, the ones that paid enough to fund his education. She had promised herself it was worth it. He would have a better life than she did. He would be a scientist, not a soldier. He would build bridges between species, not burn them. The days crawled by. Mireille tried to send messages, but nothing went through. She checked news channels from nearby systems. Nothing. It was as if New Busan had simply disappeared from the galaxy's awareness. That scared her more than anything. When colonies died, there was usually noise, investigations, outcry. Silence meant something worse. On the 6th day, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Busan system. The view screen showed what was left. The orbital stations were gone, torn apart and scattered across space like broken toys. Debris fields spread in all directions, catching the light of the system's star. They looked almost beautiful, like silver snow falling in the darkness. Mireille's hands began to shake. It was a small tremor, barely visible, but her crew noticed. In all their years together, they had never seen their captain's hands shake. "Life signs?" she asked. The sensor officer worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the controls, picking up some readings on the surface, looks like. Maybe a few thousand. Hard to tell with all the interference. A few thousand. New Busan had 50,000 people. Mireille's son was down there. Her brother. Her home. She had been born on Earth, but New Busan was where she had built her life after the wars. It was supposed to be safe. That was why she had left Daehyun there. "Take us down," she ordered. "Combat drop. Full armor. Weapons hot." The ship descended through the atmosphere. Smoke still rose from the ruins below. The colony had been built around a central city, with farms spreading out in all directions. The city was gone. Buildings stood like broken teeth, black with fire damage. The farms were scorched, the crops burned. Bodies lay in the streets. Mireille was the first one out when the ship landed. She wore full combat armor, a rifle in her hands, but she knew she wouldn't need it. Whatever had happened here was over. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Survivors emerged from underground shelters as her crew spread out. They looked like ghosts, covered in dust and dried blood. Their eyes were empty. Mireille recognized some of them. Neighbors, friends, people she had shared meals with before she left. "Where is my brother?" she asked an old woman she knew. "Where is Taiyang?" The woman pointed toward the eastern shelters with a shaking hand. Mireille ran. She found Taiyang in what used to be a medical station. He was alive, but barely. Burns covered his left side and his right leg was wrapped in bloody bandages. When he saw her, tears started running down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I couldn't protect him." Mireille knelt beside him. "Where is Daehyun?" Taeyang closed his eyes. "They came 8 days ago. No warning. Just started bombing from orbit. When they landed, they said we had to give them our water processing technology. The council wanted us to share it, but we refused. It was ours. We developed it." "Taeyang, where is my son?" He tried to talk to them. You know how he was, always believing people could work things out. He walked right up to their commander and offered to share the technology peacefully. Said we could all benefit. Mireille felt something cold spreading through her chest. What did they do? Their commander laughed, said humans needed to learn their place. He shot Daehyun in the head and broadcast it across the colony, wanted everyone to see what happens when humans get too proud. The world seemed to stop. Sound faded away. Mireille stood up slowly, mechanically. Where is his body? The mass grave. Outside the old administrative center. Mireille walked out of the shelter. Her crew tried to follow, but she waved them back. She needed to do this alone. The mass grave was easy to find. The Valtesh hadn't even bothered to bury the dead properly. They had just dumped the bodies in a pit. She found Daehyun near the bottom. He looked peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. There was a small hole in his forehead. His eyes were still open. Mireille knelt beside the pit and climbed down. She lifted her son's body in her arms. He felt so light. Too light. For 1 hour she dug. Her armor's gloves tore. Her fingers bled. She didn't care. She carried Daehyun to a hill overlooking what used to be their home and buried him properly. She marked the grave with a piece of metal from a destroyed building. As the sun set, Mireille stood over her son's grave. She didn't cry. Something had broken inside her, but it wasn't the part that produced tears. It was something deeper, something that had kept her human despite all the wars and death she had seen. "I promise you," she said quietly to the grave. "They will understand. Every species in this galaxy will understand what they did, what it costs to kill a human's child." She walked back to her ship. Her crew saw her face and stepped back. Captain Mireille was gone. Something else had taken her place, something that burned cold and bright. She accessed the colony's damaged computers and found the footage. The Valtesh had recorded everything. She watched her son die, watched him fall, watched the commander laugh. She saved the file and uploaded it to her ship. Then she sent a message across every communication channel in the sector. It was short, simple, terrifying. "The humans send their regards. Run." 3 weeks passed like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Mireille left New Busan with her brother aboard her ship. Taeyang needed medical care that the ruined colony couldn't provide. As the Iron Phoenix jumped into hyperspace, she stood in the cargo bay that had become her temporary workshop. Around her lay weapons, armor, and equipment she had collected over 2 decades of war. But these weren't the weapons she needed. Not for what she was planning. She accessed old files buried deep in her ship's computer. Files from the first contact wars. Files that were supposed to be deleted, classified, forgotten. Humanity had agreed to destroy certain weapons after the wars ended. The other species had demanded it. They said humans were too dangerous, too creative with death. Humanity had agreed, desperate for peace and a place in the galactic community. Mireille had never deleted her copies. She had known even then that humanity's willingness to disarm would be seen as weakness. She had been right. The Theta-7 mining colony sat on the edge of Valtesh space. 10,000 Valtesh lived and worked there, pulling rare metals from the planet's core. It was lightly defended. Why would they need heavy defenses? Who would attack them? Humans knew their place. Mirai's ship dropped out of hyperspace on the colony's dark side. Her crew had grown from 5 to 12. She had made calls, reached out to old friends, soldiers she had served with during the wars. They came without questions. They knew what had happened to Daehyun. Some of them had lost people too. To Valtesh, to other species, to a galaxy that treated humans like useful tools rather than equals. The attack took 6 hours. Mirai's team moved through the colony like ghosts. They disabled communications first, then power, then defenses. The Valtesh never had a chance to call for help. When the sun rose over Theta 7, the mining colony was silent. 10,000 dead. Not civilians, Mirai told herself. The Valtesh didn't separate military from civilian the way humans did. Every adult was part of their warrior culture. Every adult had voted to support the attack on New Busan. She stood in the colony's command center, looking at the control panels now dark and dead. Her hands were steady. No shaking this time. She picked up a piece of metal, sharp on one end, and walked to the wall. Using Valtesh blood from the bodies around her, she wrote 4 words in their language. Payment begins. The Valtesh Navy found the colony 2 days later. The images spread across the galactic networks within hours. The Valtesh Empire howled for justice. They called Mirai a terrorist, a monster, a creature without honor. They demanded the Galactic Council issue a warrant for her arrest. The council met in emergency session. 47 species gathered to discuss the human problem. Most of them weren't worried. One human killing some Valtesh? Tragic, but hardly worth galactic attention. Humans had always been emotional. Give her time. She would calm down or be caught. Only a few voices warned that they were making a mistake, that they didn't understand what they had awakened. Those voices were ignored. Mirai struck again 2 weeks later. A Valtesh naval depot, home to 30 warships under construction. She had studied their security for years, back when she ran escort contracts near their space. She knew their patterns, their weaknesses, their arrogance. They believed their military bases were untouchable. The depot exploded in a chain reaction that could be seen from 3 planets. 30 ships, thousands of crew, billions in resources gone in an hour. This time Mirai left a message on every surviving computer in the facility. You took my son because you could. I'm taking your empire because I can. The bounty came the next day. 50 million credits for Captain Mirai, dead or alive. The Galactic Council officially declared her a criminal. Warrants went out across civilized space. Every bounty hunter, mercenary, and law enforcement agency in the galaxy now had her picture. Mirai expected this. She had already changed her ship's registration, altered her appearance, scattered her crew across a dozen vessels. The council thought they were hunting one angry human in one ship. They didn't understand that she had become something more. Her crew grew. 50 ships now, then 100. Humans who had been waiting for someone to stand up, who had been swallowing their pride and anger for years. Young soldiers who wanted to prove themselves. Old veterans who remembered when humanity had teeth. Merchants who were tired of being pushed around. Engineers who wanted to show what human technology could really do. They came from every human colony in known space. They brought their ships, their weapons, their skills. Most of all, they brought their rage. Mirai coordinated from a hidden base in an asteroid field. She had maps of Valtesh territory spread across her screens. Supply lines, military installations, government facilities. She planned each strike with cold precision. Nothing wasted. No unnecessary deaths. Only targets that mattered. But every night before she slept her 2 hours, she watched the footage. Daehyun walking toward the Valtesh commander. Daehyun speaking calmly, reasonably, hopefully. The commander laughing. The gun rising. Her son falling, she never cried. That part of her had died on the hill where she buried him. But she needed to remember. Needed to keep the fire burning. Because if she stopped, if she let herself feel the grief fully, it would destroy her. Better to let it destroy the Valtesh instead. 3 months after New Busan burned, Mirai's forces captured a Valtesh supply convoy. Most of the crew died in the fight, but she kept one alive. An officer named Kresh who had served in the military for 30 years. She had her people tie him to a chair in an empty cargo bay. I need information, she said, sitting across from him. You're going to give it to me. Kresh laughed, showing his sharp teeth. Humans, always so dramatic. Kill me or don't, I won't betray my empire. I don't need you to betray anything, Mirai said calmly. I just need you to confirm what I already know. The attack on New Busan. General Barak ordered it. But he didn't do it alone. Kresh stopped laughing. Something in his eyes changed. The Galactic Council, Mireille continued. They approved it. Didn't they? They wanted to send a message to human colonies. Don't get too independent. Don't develop technology that might threaten the established order. Stay in your place. You're insane, Kresh said, but his voice shook. Mireille leaned forward. My son died because the council decided humans needed to be reminded that we're second-class citizens, that our lives matter less, that our children are acceptable losses for political messages. She stood up and walked to the cargo bay door. Thank you for confirming it. Your silence told me everything. Wait, Kresh called out. What are you going to do? Mireille looked back at him. I'm going to burn it all down. Every species that voted for that attack. Every government that stayed silent. Every council member who thought human lives were cheap. I'm going to teach the galaxy a lesson they'll remember for 1,000 years. You'll die, Kresh said. You'll all die. You can't fight the entire galaxy. Probably, Mireille agreed. But we'll die on our feet fighting back. That's more than my son got. She left him there and went to her communications station. The proof of council involvement was scattered across multiple sources, but she had pieced it together. Intercepted messages, financial records, travel logs. Enough to show the pattern. Enough to prove the conspiracy. Mireille broadcast it all across every human colony in known space. 200 settlements received the message simultaneously. The evidence. The truth. What had been done to them with the council's blessing. Humanity had been quiet for 20 years. Grateful for peace. Accepting their place. Trying to fit in. That ended the moment Mireille's broadcast finished. Protests erupted on every human world. Peaceful at first, then not so peaceful when local authorities tried to shut them down. Human workers walked off their jobs at alien facilities. Human merchants refused to trade with council species. Human colonies declared they would no longer recognize council authority. The galaxy had ignored one angry mother. Now they had to face an angry species. Mireille stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the reports come in. Her face showed no emotion, no satisfaction, no triumph, just cold determination. Taeyang limped onto the bridge, his leg still healing. Mireille, this is bigger than revenge now. You've started something that could tear the galaxy apart. Good, she said quietly. Let it burn. The Galactic Council chamber looked like it always had. Beautiful. Peaceful. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a circle that symbolized equality. The dome above them showed the stars, a reminder that they were all children of the same universe. Ambassador Vren of the Korthan species stood to address the assembly. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. The human situation is getting out of control. We have reports of riots on 12 colony worlds. 3 trade stations have been occupied by human protesters. This terrorist Mireille must be stopped. With respect, Ambassador Hollis of Earth said quietly, perhaps we should discuss why humans are rioting. Perhaps we should address the evidence Captain Mireille released. Evidence that shows this council approved the attack on New Busan. The chamber fell silent. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. That evidence is falsified, Vren said quickly, obviously fabricated by criminals seeking to justify their violence. Then let us investigate, Hollis replied. Let us open the records and prove the evidence is false, unless there's a reason we can't do that. Nobody answered. The silence told Hollis everything he needed to know. His own government had kept him in the dark about New Busan. He had learned the truth from Mireille's broadcast, just like everyone else. Now he understood why they hadn't told him, why they had kept their human representative ignorant of what was being done to his own people. While the council debated, Mireille struck again. A Korthan military research facility, hidden on a moon in an unmarked system. The Korthan had been developing biological weapons there, designed to target human genetics specifically. They had voted to approve New Busan's destruction. Now they paid the price. The facility disappeared in a flash of nuclear fire. Mireille had used one of humanity's forbidden weapons, technology they had promised to destroy after the First Contact Wars. The message was clear. Those promises meant nothing anymore. 500 human ships now followed Mireille's banner. They weren't a fleet, not really. Just a collection of angry people with weapons and nothing left to lose. But they moved like a fleet. They fought like a fleet, and they were winning. The Valtesh Empire mobilized a battle group to hunt Mirai down. 50 warships, the pride of their navy, commanded by Admiral Korth. They tracked her fleet to the Crimson Nebula, a region of space filled with gas clouds and radiation that made sensors unreliable, perfect for an ambush. Korth smiled as his ships entered the nebula. He would crush these humans and restore his empire's honor. The bounty would be nice, but the glory mattered more. He would be the admiral who ended the human rebellion. He never saw the attack coming. Mirai's ships had been hiding in the gas clouds, engines cold, waiting, but they weren't the real threat. The real threat was the swarm. Thousands of small drones, each no bigger than a human fist, powered by simple AI. The Galactic Council had made humanity promise to never use AI in weapons. They said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Mirai didn't care about promises anymore. The drones swarmed out of the nebula like angry insects. They moved in patterns no organic pilot could follow, overwhelming the Valtesh point defenses through sheer numbers. Each drone carried a small explosive charge. Individually, they couldn't hurt a warship, but thousands hitting at once? That was different. Korth's flagship died first, its shields collapsing under the assault. The other ships tried to retreat, but the drones followed. When the battle ended 3 hours later, only 7 Valtesh ships escaped. 43 were destroyed or captured. The galaxy watched the footage in shock. How had humans done this? Where had they gotten this technology? Why hadn't anyone realized how dangerous they still were? Mirai broadcast a message after the battle. Her face appeared on screens across civilized space. She looked tired, older, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "You called us weak," she said. "You called us emotional. You called us inferior. You killed our children to prove it. Now you understand your mistake. Humanity isn't weak. We're patient. We're adaptable. And when you hurt us, we don't forget. We don't forgive. We come back stronger." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "This is a message to the Galactic Council. Return the criminals who ordered the attack on New Busan for trial. Pay reparations to the survivors. Grant humanity equal status in all council decisions. Do this and the fighting stops. Refuse and we'll show you what humans are really capable of." The council's response came the next day. They rejected all demands. They called Mirai a war criminal. They mobilized a combined fleet from multiple species, 2,000 warships strong, to crush the human rebellion once and for all. Mirai expected this. She was counting on it. While the council fleet gathered, her forces struck across 6 different systems simultaneously: supply depots, communications relays, government facilities, each target chosen carefully to cause maximum disruption with minimum civilian casualties. Mirai didn't want to kill innocent people. She wanted to break the system that had killed her son. Other species began to take notice. Not the big ones, the ones who sat on the council and made the decisions. The small ones. The ones who had been pushed around for years, told to accept their place, warned not to make trouble. They saw humans fighting back against impossible odds. Some of them started to wonder why they didn't fight too. On the colony world of Tassis, the native population rose up against their Korthan overseers. On the mining station of Deep 7, workers from 3 different species went on strike demanding better conditions. On dozens of worlds, the established order began to crack. The council tried to crack down, but their forces were spread thin, chasing Mirai's fleet. They couldn't be everywhere at once. And every time they sent ships to one crisis, another emerged somewhere else. Mirai coordinated everything from her flagship. She didn't sleep anymore, just took stimulants to stay awake and worked until she collapsed. Her crew worried about her. Taeyang begged her to rest. She ignored them all. She had a map on her screen showing council territory in red. Slowly, piece by piece, that red was being replaced by other colors: blue for human-controlled space, green for neutral systems, yellow for areas in rebellion. The red was shrinking. "We're winning," her tactical officer said one day, looking at the map. "No," Mirai replied quietly. "We're surviving." "That's not the same thing." She pulled up another file on her screen. Intelligence reports on High General Barak, the Valtesh commander who had killed Daehyun. He was still alive, still serving, still being celebrated as a hero by his people. The Valtesh had promoted him after New Busan, made him a symbol of their strength. Mirai had been tracking him for months. His movements, his schedule, his security. She knew everything about him: where he lived, where he worked, where he felt safe. Soon, she promised herself. Soon she would take everything from him, just as he had taken everything from her. But first she needed to break the Council's power, needed to show the galaxy that humanity would never bow again. A message came through from one of her scout ships. The Council's combined fleet was moving, 2,000 warships heading toward the human colony of Terra Nova. They were going to make an example of it, just as they had made an example of New Busan. Mirai looked at the numbers. She had 500 ships. They had 2,000. The smart move would be to avoid the fight, strike somewhere else while they were distracted. But Terra Nova had 50,000 humans, families, children, people who looked at her as a hero, as their protector. If she abandoned them, what was she fighting for? She made her decision. Signal the fleet, she ordered. We're going to Terra Nova, all ships. Everything we have, and Captain, her tactical officer said carefully. We can't win that fight. The numbers are impossible. The numbers are always impossible, Mirai said. That's never stopped humans before. She stood up and looked at her crew. These people had followed her through hell, had trusted her when the whole galaxy called her a terrorist, had believed in her when she barely believed in herself. I won't order anyone to come with me, she said. This is probably a suicide run. If you want to leave, go now. No judgment. No shame. Nobody moved. One by one, her crew stood up, ready to follow her into death if that's what it took. Mirai felt something twist in her chest. Not quite emotion, not quite hope, but something close. These humans, these brave, stubborn, impossible humans, they reminded her of Daehyun, always believing things could be better, always willing to fight for what was right. Maybe she was fighting for more than revenge after all. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward Terra Nova and the largest space battle in human history. Behind them, across hundreds of human colonies, people watched and waited. Some prayed, some prepared to fight. All of them understood that the next few days would decide everything. Humanity's fate would be written in the stars above Terra Nova, in fire and blood and courage, the way it had always been written. The Council fleet arrived at Terra Nova first. 2,000 warships spread across the system like a steel curtain. Admiral Rothek of the Korthan Navy commanded the force from his flagship, the Eternal Justice. He had orders to make this quick and clean. Take the colony. Execute the leaders. Send a message that would end the human rebellion once and for all. He didn't expect the humans to fight back. 500 ships against 2,000? It was suicide. No rational species would accept those odds, but humans had never been rational. That's what made them dangerous. Mirai's fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the system. Her ships were smaller, older, patched together from scrap and determination, but they had something the Council fleet didn't. They had fury. They had nothing left to lose. And they had Mirai. All ships, she broadcast across the human fleet. Remember New Busan, remember why we're here. Remember every human child who died because the galaxy thought we didn't matter. Today we show them they were wrong. Today we show them what humans can do. The battle began. Mirai didn't fight like a traditional admiral. She didn't line up her ships and trade fire. That was how the Council expected combat to work, honor, formation, rules. Instead, she used chaos. Her fleet scattered into dozens of small groups, each moving independently but coordinated through encrypted channels. The drone swarms launched first, millions of them, filling space with threats the Council point defenses couldn't track. While the enemy focused on the drones, human ships attacked from unexpected angles, hit fast, and disappeared. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Hit and run, ambush, misdirection. All the tactics humanity had perfected through thousands of years of warfare on Earth. The Council had better ships and more ships, but they didn't understand this kind of fighting. They had grown comfortable with their superiority. They had forgotten that desperation breeds innovation. Admiral Rothek watched his fleet take losses and didn't understand how. His ships were better. His crews were trained. His technology was superior. But somehow these inferior humans were hurting him. It didn't make sense. Focus fire on their flagship, he ordered. Kill their commander and they'll break. 6 Council warships moved to intercept Mirai's ship. They opened fire with everything they had. But when the weapons hit, they found empty space. Mirai's flagship was a decoy, a shell filled with explosives and automated systems. The real command ship was hiding in the debris field, looking like wreckage coordinating the battle through passive sensors. The decoy exploded, taking 2 council ships with it. Rothek realized too late that he was fighting an enemy who didn't care about honor or tradition. An enemy who would sacrifice anything to win. The battle raged for 6 hours. The system burned with weapons fire and dying ships. Both sides took heavy losses, but slowly, impossibly, the humans started to gain ground, not through superior firepower but through sheer stubbornness. Every time a human ship died, another moved up to take its place. Every time the council thought they had broken through, they found another ambush waiting. Taeyang coordinated the medical ships from a cruiser behind the main battle. He watched hundreds of humans die on his screens, ships breaking apart, escape pods launching into the void. He wanted to hate his sister for this, for starting a war that would kill so many. But he understood why she had done it. He had held Daehyun's hand as the boy died, had seen the contempt in the Valtesh commander's eyes. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth dying for. The turning point came when a human engineer named Sora, commanding a damaged freighter, made a decision. Her ship was dying, engines failing, weapons gone. She could evacuate her crew and surrender, or she could do something that mattered. She pointed her ship at the council flagship and burned her remaining engines hot. The council tried to shoot her down, but she was already dead in their eyes, already ignored. By the time they realized what she was doing, it was too late. The freighter hit the Eternal Justice at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear bomb. Admiral Rothek died without knowing what happened. His flagship broke in half and his fleet lost its command structure. Mirai saw the opportunity and took it. All ships full assault. Break their formation now. The human fleet surged forward. The council ships, suddenly without coordination, began to fall back. Some tried to retreat. Others fought on alone. Within an hour, the battle was over. The humans had lost 200 ships, but they had destroyed or captured over 800 council vessels. The remaining council fleet jumped to hyperspace in disorder, leaving Terra Nova free. The victory should have felt sweet. Instead, Mirai just felt tired. She looked at the casualty reports. 30,000 humans dead. 30,000 people who would never go home. 30,000 families who would feel the pain she felt when Daehyun died. But Terra Nova was safe. 50,000 colonists lived because of what had happened here. That had to count for something. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The impossible had happened. Humans had defeated a council fleet 4 times their size. Suddenly, humanity didn't look so weak anymore. Suddenly, the other species started to worry. More importantly, the smaller species started to hope. If humans could fight back and win, maybe they could too. Rebellions that had been simmering for years began to boil over. The council found itself fighting fires across a dozen systems. Mirai didn't give them time to recover. While the council scrambled to maintain control, she struck again and again. Supply lines, communication networks, financial centers, each attack carefully planned to cause maximum disruption. She was teaching the galaxy a lesson about logistics. You could have the biggest military in the universe, but if you couldn't feed it, fuel it, or pay it, you had nothing. The council met in emergency session again. This time, there was no debate about whether humans were a threat. The question now was how to stop them. We need to negotiate, Ambassador Hollis said. Give them what they want. Equal representation. Reparations for New Busan, justice for the criminals responsible. Never, Vren spat. If we bow to human demands, every inferior species in the galaxy will think they can make demands too. The order we've built will collapse. The order is already collapsing, Hollis replied. Look at the reports. Rebellions everywhere, trade disrupted, colonies declaring independence. Mirai didn't just start a war, she started a revolution. Then we crush the revolution, another ambassador said. Assemble every ship we have. Burn the human colonies. Show them and everyone else what happens when you challenge the council. Hollis stood up. If you do that, I promise you humans will burn your worlds in return. You'll have a war that never ends. A war where nobody wins. Sit down, Ambassador, Vren ordered. You don't speak for humanity. That terrorist Mirai does. Hollis looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from 47 species. Most of them looked angry. Some looked scared. None of them looked willing to compromise. They still thought they could win through force. They still didn't understand what they were dealing with. He sent a coded message to Earth. It was time for humanity's official government to make a choice. Stand with the Council or stand with Mirai. There was no middle ground anymore. While the council debated, Mireille prepared for the next phase. She had been tracking General Barek for months. Now her intelligence network reported something interesting. Barek was traveling to Nexus Prime, the council's capital, for an award ceremony. He was receiving a medal for his distinguished service in dealing with human unrest. They were celebrating the man who killed her son, giving him honors, making him a hero. Mireille looked at the map of Nexus Prime on her screen. The ring world was the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Thousands of defense stations, millions of military personnel, shields that could withstand planetary bombardment. Getting there would be hard. Getting in would be harder. Getting out alive would be impossible. She didn't care. Signal the fleet, she ordered. We're going to Nexus Prime. Her officers stared at her in shock. Captain, that's suicide. We can't assault the council's capital. I'm not assaulting it, Mireille said calmly. I'm walking in the front door. And I'm going to show the galaxy that no place is safe. That human justice reaches everywhere. That you can't kill our children and celebrate it. She looked at her crew. These people who had followed her through hell. This is the end game. After this, it's over one way or another. Anyone who wants out, leave now. I won't think less of you. Nobody left. They had come too far. Sacrificed too much. They would see it through to the end. Mireille allowed herself a small, cold smile. She pulled up the footage of Daehyun's death one last time. Watched her son fall. Watched Barek laugh. I'm coming, she whispered to the screen. I'm coming for all of you. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the heart of galactic civilization. Behind them, humanity held its breath. Ahead of them, the council prepared for war. And in the space between, the galaxy burned. Nexus Prime hung in space like a silver crown. The ring world was a monument to galactic civilization, home to billions, center of politics and power for 47 species. Its defenses were designed to stop any attack. No enemy had ever threatened it. No enemy had ever been foolish enough to try. Until now. Mireille's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 300 ships, all that remained after months of fighting. They looked tiny compared to the defensive grid that surrounded Nexus Prime. Thousands of weapon platforms. Defense stations the size of cities. Patrol fleets that outnumbered her forces 10 to 1. They're hailing us, her communications officer reported, ordering us to surrender or be destroyed. Ignore them, Mireille said. Launch the drones. The swarms went first. Millions of tiny machines, each carrying a small explosive charge and basic AI. The council's point defenses opened fire, filling space with weapons fire. Thousands of drones died. Tens of thousands. But for everyone destroyed, 10 more slipped through. The defense platforms started going dark as drones overwhelmed their systems. Explosions blossomed across the defensive grid like deadly flowers. It wasn't enough to break through completely, but it created gaps. Opportunities. All ships attack formation, Mireille ordered. Make them think we're going for a full assault. Her fleet charged forward, weapons blazing. The council forces responded exactly as she predicted, concentrating their defenses on stopping the main attack. While they focused on her ships, smaller human craft slipped through the gaps in the defensive grid, stealth shuttles nearly invisible to sensors carrying strike teams. Mireille was on one of those shuttles. She wore light armor and carried weapons she had used 20 years ago during the First Contact Wars. Around her sat 12 of her best soldiers. They all knew this was a one-way trip. They went anyway. The shuttle landed in a maintenance bay on Nexus Prime's underbelly. The team moved quickly through service corridors following maps Mireille had memorized. They encountered security checkpoints. Guards died quietly. Cameras were disabled. They moved like ghosts through the heart of galactic civilization. In the council chamber, an emergency session was underway. Ambassadors watched screens showing the battle in orbit. They saw human ships dying by the dozens. They saw the defensive grid holding. They allowed themselves to feel relieved. The human attack was failing. Order would be restored. Then the doors to the chamber exploded inward. Mireille walked through the smoke, her rifle raised. Her team spread out, covering every exit. The ambassadors froze in shock. This was impossible. Nobody could breach Nexus Prime's security. Nobody could reach the council chamber. Nobody moves, Mireille said calmly. Nobody calls for help. You're all going to sit there and listen. Ambassador Vren stood up. This is an outrage. You cannot. Mireille shot him. Not to kill, just to wound. He fell back into his seat, screaming, holding his leg. The other ambassador sat very still. I said nobody moves, Mirai repeated. She looked around the chamber at the representatives of 47 species. You're going to broadcast what happens next across every channel in the galaxy. Everyone is going to watch. Everyone is going to understand. She pulled up a holographic display in the center of the chamber, the footage of Daehyun's death. Her son walking toward the Valtesh commander, speaking calmly, trying to negotiate. The gun rising, the shot, the body falling, the laughter. This is my son, Mirai said quietly. Daehyun, he was 19 years old. He wanted to be a scientist. He believed different species could work together. He believed in peace, she paused. You killed him to send a message, to remind humans of their place. So now I'm sending a message back. She activated her communicator. Bring him in. Her soldiers dragged General Barak into the chamber. He was in chains, beaten, his eyes wide with fear. Mirai had captured him an hour ago, taken him from his quarters while the battle raged overhead. Nobody had noticed one Valtesh general disappearing in the chaos. She forced Barak to his knees in front of the council. This is the creature who murdered my son, the creature you celebrated, the creature you gave medals to. Please, Barak whispered. I was following orders. I was doing my duty. My son was following his conscience, Mirai replied. He was trying to save lives. You killed him because you could, because you thought human lives didn't matter. She looked at the council. I could kill him now. Execute him the way he executed Daehyun, but that wouldn't change anything. One dead general doesn't fix a broken system. She pulled out a small device and placed it on the floor. This is a trigger, connected to fusion charges I've placed throughout Nexus Prime's support structures. Not enough to destroy the ring world, but enough to cripple it for decades. Billions would die. Your center of power would fall. The chamber erupted in panic. Ambassadors shouted. Some tried to call for security. Mirai fired a shot into the ceiling and everyone fell silent. I'm not here to murder billions, she said. I'm not a monster. I'm a mother who wants justice. So here's my offer. You have 1 hour to meet my demands. Full recognition of human equality. Council representation. Reparations for every human colony you've damaged. And most importantly, justice. Everyone who approved the attack on New Busan stands trial under human law. Never. One ambassador spat. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Mirai checked her watch. 59 minutes. Choose wisely. Outside the chamber, council security forces were gathering, but they couldn't attack without risking the ambassadors' lives. Mirai had positioned her soldiers perfectly, using the council members as shields. It was brutal, calculating, effective. The minutes ticked by. The council argued. Some wanted to refuse, to call her bluff. Others looked at her face and realized she wasn't bluffing. This human had already lost everything. She had nothing to trade except her own life, and she clearly didn't value that anymore. Ambassador Hollis of Earth stood up. Please listen to me. Mirai isn't a terrorist. She's a symptom. You created her when you decided human lives were worth less than other species, when you approved the destruction of New Busan, when you celebrated the murder of children. If you refuse her now, other humans will take her place. This will never end. So we surrender to human demands? Fran asked, clutching his wounded leg. Let them dictate terms? We compromise, Hollis said. We admit our mistakes. We build something better. Or we fight a war that will destroy us all. The hour was almost up. Mirai's finger moved toward the trigger. She thought about Daehyun, about his dreams of peace, about all the other children, human and alien, who would die if she pressed the button. She wondered if this was what he would have wanted. Then she remembered his body in that mass grave, the laughter of his killer, the contempt in the Valtesh commander's eyes. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Some wrongs couldn't be forgotten, but maybe they could be repaid. With 30 seconds remaining, the council voted. It was close. Many wanted to refuse, but enough voted yes, swayed by fear or wisdom or simple self-preservation. The Nexus Accords were drafted in emergency session, signed in blood and broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity would have equal status. Council representation, reparations, and the criminals responsible for New Busan would face justice. All charges against Mirai were dropped as part of the agreement. She was granted immunity in exchange for standing down. General Barak would be handed over to human authorities for trial. Mirai released the ambassadors and walked out of the chamber with Barak in chains. Her fleet withdrew from Nexus Prime's orbit. The battle stopped. After 6 months of war, humanity had won, but the victory felt hollow. Mirai had succeeded. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again, but at what cost? Hundreds of thousands dead, entire fleets destroyed, economies shattered, alliances broken, and Dae-hyun was still gone. The trial of General Barak took place on Earth, broadcast across the galaxy. He was found guilty of war crimes against humanity, murder. The sentence was death. Mirai carried out the execution personally. She had demanded that right. As Barak kneeled before her, she thought about mercy, about forgiveness, about what Dae-hyun would have wanted. Then she pulled the trigger. The last death, the last act of war, the last payment for her son's blood. Afterward, Mirai dissolved her fleet. Most of her crew returned to civilian life. Some joined Earth's official military, their experience too valuable to waste. A few stayed with her, helping rebuild New Busan. The colony rose from its ashes slowly. Buildings were reconstructed. Farms were replanted. Survivors returned, bringing new hope. The galaxy sent aid, guilty and fearful in equal measure. Humans were no longer the weakest species. They were the ones who had brought the mighty council to its knees. Mirai spent her remaining years on that hill overlooking New Busan. She built a garden where Dae-hyun was buried. Flowers grew there now, bright and beautiful. She tended them every day, talking to her son about the galaxy he would have loved to see. Children from New Busan would visit sometimes, playing among the flowers. Alien children, too, from species that had learned to respect humanity. Once, a young Valtesh child came with her parents. They were refugees, fleeing their own empire's collapse after losing the war. The child approached Mirai nervously. "Are you the one who started the war?" Mirai looked at the child for a long moment. "Yes, why?" "Because they killed my son. Because they thought humans didn't."